A multi-billion-dollar nuclear battleship cuts through the dark waters of the open ocean. The crew is working around the clock, completely blind to the nightmare creeping right under their noses. Enter Casey. He roams the corridors, quietly watching every detail and looking out for his fellow sailors. But behind closed doors, a dangerous power struggle is brewing. Captain Copa is furious. Casey is completely out of uniform, wearing a casual chef's apron instead of official military attire. The twist? This humble cook has a chest full of top-tier military medals. Before the argument explodes, Commander Krill steps in. He reminds the captain that his birthday is coming up, acting like a peacemaker. But Krill has a dark, hidden motive. He slaps Casey with an endless list of kitchen duties, locking him in the galley. Krill deeply despises how much the captain respects this cook. The captain fires back, warning Krill to back off because Casey is flawless. But what is Krill really planning? Suddenly, breaking news flashes on the ship's monitors. President Bush is arriving by helicopter to thank the crew before the battleship heads to San Francisco. This is the legendary ship's final mission before its massive nuclear arsenal is completely decommissioned. While the president speaks, Casey and his kitchen crew are laughing, completely relaxed. But hours later, a sinister rumor spreads. The crew whispers about Krill hijacking the captain's authority. A Marine officer pulls Krill aside with a terrifying warning. Krill just canceled the standard security patrols for the birthday party. This means the ship's lethal nuclear weapons are now completely unprotected. Krill snaps, ignoring the warning, and a heated fight erupts. The ship's security is officially dead in the water, and the clock is ticking. Moments later, a guard enters the kitchen. He claims a private helicopter is landing with catering food, and everyone needs to head to the deck immediately. Casey refuses. He only takes orders from the captain, period. When the guard insists it's a surprise party, Casey coldly responds, "Neither I nor the captain like surprises." His crew warns him he's playing with fire, but they marvel at his absolute fearlessness as Casey openly mocks Krill. Meanwhile, Krill is in the captain's office with shocking news. An unauthorized helicopter is approaching. Krill lies smoothly, claiming the admiral organized a surprise birthday show. The skeptical captain reluctantly agrees. Krill convinces him to stay inside his cabin to avoid ruining the surprise. The trap is set. Moments later, a guard enters the kitchen. He claims a private helicopter is landing with catering food, and everyone needs to head to the deck immediately. Casey refuses. He only takes orders from the captain, period. When the guard insists it's a surprise party, Casey coldly responds, "Neither I nor the captain like surprises." His crew warns him he's playing with fire, but they marvel at his absolute fearlessness as Casey openly mocks Krill. Meanwhile, Krill is in the captain's office with shocking news. An unauthorized helicopter is approaching. Krill lies smoothly, claiming the admiral organized a surprise birthday show. The skeptical captain reluctantly agrees. Krill convinces him to stay inside his cabin to avoid ruining the surprise. The trap is set. Krill storms the kitchen, orders everyone to the deck, and confronts Casey alone. Vicious insults fly. Blinded by rage, Casey shoves him. Guards pin Casey down, but he breaks free and lands a massive punch right across Krill's face. Furious, Krill wants him in the brig. But wait, if the captain finds out, he'll release him instantly. Krill changes the plan. He orders the guards to lock Casey inside the heavy meat freezer instead. He warns the outside guard, Nash, that Casey is a military-hating lunatic. His orders? If Casey tries to escape, shoot him dead on sight. The helicopter touches down. Out steps William Strannix, a beautiful performer named Jordan, and a team of heavily armed elite mercenaries. Strannix plays the part of an entertainer perfectly, while Jordan stays dead silent, fighting severe seasickness. The clueless crew cheers, welcoming their executioners inside. Krill leads them straight into the heart of the ship. Deep inside the pitch-black meat freezer, Casey is freezing. He demands to know why he's locked in a freezer, but Nash ignores him. Outside, the sailors are completely starstruck by Jordan. Krill guides her to a private room, hands her some motion sickness pills, and tells Strannix to set up the band. Krill leaves to change his clothes. The final pieces of the puzzle are falling into place. Time is running out. Casey screams at Nash that the food in the oven is burning, and thick smoke is filling the kitchen. At that exact moment, Jordan enters the guard room to grab her pills. On the main deck, the music kicks off. Strannix takes the stage, singing for the distracted crew. Inside the corridor, Nash orders Casey to shut up. Casey warns Nash that Krill is setting a trap, begging him to alert the captain. But it's too late. The crew is eating and drinking, totally vulnerable. Krill walks out, wearing a dress, laughing with the men before slipping away to the captain's cabin. Suddenly, dense smoke pours out of the kitchen. Nash panics. Krill enters the captain's cabin, smiling. Out on deck, the music blasts. Then, without warning, Strannix pulls a hidden gun and shoots an officer dead. Chaos explodes. Heavy gunfire rips through the crowd. Inside the cabin, Krill draws his weapon and ruthlessly murders the captain. It was an inside job from the very beginning. The mercenaries storm the bridge and the control room, executing everyone in sight. Anyone who fights back is butchered in seconds. Strannix orders his men to hunt down every survivor. They herd the remaining crew into a massive room and lock them away. Every guard outside the captain's quarters is wiped out. The terrorists now fully control a nuclear battleship. Back at the freezer, Casey is still trapped. Nash finally opens the heavy door with extreme caution. Suddenly, loud gunshots echo through the walls. Nash panics and radios Krill. Krill lies, claiming it's just celebratory fireworks, and orders Nash to keep Casey locked away forever. Strannix asks who he's talking to. Krill shrugs it off. Just a harmless cook. Strannix doesn't take chances. He sends 2 mercenaries to eliminate Casey. Nash turns back to Casey, echoing the firework lie. Casey calls him a fool, pleading to be let out because something is horribly wrong. Nash refuses. Suddenly, the 2 mercenaries ambush Nash, stripping his weapon. They open the freezer door and fire wildly into the dark. Casey uses the smoke, springs out like a phantom, locks both mercenaries inside the freezer, and cuts the power. The hunt is officially on. Casey silently moves through the shadows, neutralizing every terrorist he runs into. He begins crafting lethal improvised traps, placing a highly volatile substance inside a kitchen microwave, turning it into a devastating time bomb. Suddenly, the terrorists spot a military fighter jet soaring over the ship. Panic ripples through the mercenaries, but they react instantly, launching a surface-to-air missile and blowing the jet out of the sky. As they celebrate, Casey discovers the captain's mutilated body. Devastated, he silently moves his commander to a safe location and covers him up. At military headquarters, Admiral Bates contacts the CIA, demanding top analyst Tom Breaker. Strannix patches through to them via the ship's radio, delivering a chilling ultimatum. He will execute every hostage and launch the nuclear missiles unless they give him a guaranteed escape route. To prove he isn't bluffing, Strannix recites the unlisted nuclear launch codes. The room goes dead silent. The military is paralyzed. When asked why, Strannix reveals a dark truth. 6 months ago, Breaker canceled a highly sensitive Black Ops mission called Operation Cleopatra, ruining Strannix's life. Breaker tries to apologize, but Strannix is done talking. Strannix orders Pat to initiate the launch. A massive Tomahawk missile fires from the deck, shaking the entire battleship as it tears into the sky. Its target? Washington, D.C. To make matters worse, Strannix obliterates the ship's satellite communication array, cutting off the military's eyes and ears. Headquarters frantically calls the White House. On board, the mercenaries begin tearing the ship apart, throwing vital equipment into the ocean. Casey watches from the shadows, tracking their every move. He makes his way to the upper deck, navigating through rows of dead bodies. Suddenly, he finds Jordan. She is completely out of it, dancing mindlessly to the music, oblivious to the slaughter. Casey pulls his gun, forces her to turn off the music, and drags her into a hidden room. Jordan snaps out of her trance, horrified by the sight of the blood. She reveals that Krill drugged her with heavy medication, which completely knocked her out. Casey demands to know exactly how many mercenaries arrived on the helicopter, promising to keep her alive. Back at the Pentagon, commanders realize Strannix now holds 8 nuclear missiles. They pull up his classified profile. He is an elite rogue operative whose mind shattered, turning him into a highly volatile threat to global security. On the ship, Strannix realizes the 2 mercenaries he sent to the kitchen never returned. He knows Krill was right. The cook is a major problem. Casey secures Jordan in a hidden compartment, ordering her to stay silent. Strannix and Krill heavily arm themselves and march into the kitchen to investigate. They quickly realize this cook is a lethal professional. Suddenly, the rigged microwave triggers. A massive explosion rips through the kitchen, killing several mercenaries instantly. Strannix is stunned. Burning with curiosity, he demands to see the cook's official file. Meanwhile, Admiral Bates scrambles for options. He plans to jam the ship's radar. If that fails, his only remaining choice is a massive airstrike to sink the entire battleship, killing everyone on board to prevent a nuclear apocalypse. Krill breaches the captain's private safe and pulls out Casey's true military record. He is completely paralyzed by what he reads. Casey isn't a cook. He is a highly decorated Navy SEAL, an elite Black Ops counterterrorism expert, and a master of explosives. At that exact moment, a mercenary runs in with terrifying news. More guards are turning up dead. Strannix berates Krill for his catastrophic failure. Casey reunites with Jordan, reveals his tactical plan, and slips back into the shadows. He ambushes a wandering guard, kills him, and steals his tactical gear. He takes a small emergency life raft and attaches a custom satellite transmitter to it. While Strannix is distracted, Casey activates the transmitter, patching directly through to Admiral Bates. He lays out the situation on the ship in vivid detail. Bates warns him about the nuclear missiles and orders Casey to coordinate with an incoming elite strike team, establishing a safe drop zone. Jordan overhears the conversation, realizing Casey is a deadly soldier. Casey confesses his true identity, tells her to hide, and heads straight for the parked helicopter. Inside the command deck, Strannix and Krill gloat over the billions of dollars they are about to acquire, completely unaware that Casey is currently harvesting military-grade ammunition to create a massive stockpile of homemade pipe bombs. Suddenly, a group of mercenaries spots Casey near the helicopter. They open fire from all directions. Casey has no choice but to dive over the railing into the freezing ocean below as the helicopter explodes into a massive fireball. The mercenaries hunt down Jordan, dragging her away as she screams that she knows nothing. But Casey rises from the water like a ghost. He ambushes the guards, executing them all, and pulls Jordan back into hiding. He rigs a heavy steel door with a devastating tripwire explosive. When a squad of mercenaries attempts to breach the door, it detonates, blowing them to pieces. Strannix grows desperate. Krill suggests a twisted solution: activate the emergency sprinkler system to drown the captured sailors locked in the lower compartments, knowing Casey will risk his life to save them. Casey reaches the lower decks and hears the trapped sailors screaming for help behind a locked steel door. He breaches the door, frees the men, and arms them with stolen weapons, explaining the situation. Meanwhile, Strannix notices a catastrophic power drop in the weapons network. He realizes the entire system will shut down permanently in 30 minutes. Krill broadcasts a live video feed of the drowning sailors to the ship's monitors. Casey sees the footage and runs to their rescue. He sets a lethal trap in the corridor, neutralizing the advancing guards, and manages to shut down the flooding valves just in time. The radio buzzes. Admiral Bates calls back, but Jordan answers. A baffled Bates demands to speak with Casey immediately. Bates screams at Casey for abandoning the original perimeter plan, but Casey defiantly stands his ground. He declares he will save this ship and its crew, even if it kills him. Faced with Casey's iron will, the Admiral relents. Jordan refuses to leave his side, knowing he is her only hope for survival. Strannix feels his absolute control slipping away. Panicking, he orders Pat to override the system and fire the remaining missiles. Instead, the security grid locks down completely, throwing the remaining terrorists into utter chaos. Minutes later, military backup helicopters arrive on the scene. Casey radios their command, feeding them exact enemy positions. He pulls Jordan to a secure vantage point, but tragedy strikes instantly. The ship's automated anti-aircraft cannons open fire, obliterating the helicopters in blinding explosions. Heartbroken and desperate, Admiral Bates commands an all-out devastating aerial bombardment to sink the battleship. Strannix realizes his army is decimated. He orders his last remaining men to prepare their getaway submarine. Casey strips down live artillery shells, packing the raw explosives into a massive underwater charge. He dives into the ocean, swimming silently beneath the waves until he reaches the submarine. Trailing guards spot him and open fire, but Casey pushes through, plants the explosives, and detonates them, blowing the submarine to pieces. He crawls back onto the deck, wounded and bleeding. A terrorist corners him, raising a rifle to execute him, but Jordan fires a sudden shot, killing the guard and saving Casey's life. Strannix learns the submarine is destroyed, and hysteria sets in. Krill promises he can fix the vessel, but a completely unhinged Strannix decides to launch a nuclear strike on Hawaii as pure, vengeful retaliation. He forces Pat to bypass the system lock at gunpoint. Casey, Jordan, and the armed sailors gather to plan their final assault. They realize the battleship's massive main artillery turrets are still fully loaded with live shells. Strannix successfully restores the missile system, completely unaware that Casey is manually aiming the giant cannons. Casey pulls the trigger, firing the massive artillery directly into the ship's own superstructure, shattering the terrorists' command and completely vaporizing the remaining submarine docks. Strannix completely snaps. He violently banishes his remaining men from the room and launches 2 nuclear missiles directly toward the United States mainland. He sits back, waiting for total global destruction. Admiral Bates learns the nuclear warheads will strike their targets in exactly 24 minutes, ordering every available fighter jet into the air. In a pathetic display of cowardice, CIA officials immediately begin plotting to frame Casey for the entire catastrophe. Back on the ship, Jordan helps a wounded sailor into a life raft while Casey storms the main command center. He finds Strannix waiting for him. A shocking truth comes to light. Casey and Strannix share a dark history from secret Black Ops missions years ago. Strannix mocks him, claiming the missile encryption cannot be broken and that he is the only one holding the kill switch key. A brutal bloody knife and fist fight explodes across the room. Casey uses his elite training to overpower Strannix, killing him on the spot. He grabs the launch codes, contacts Admiral Bates, and inputs the self-destruct sequence, detonating the first missile harmlessly in mid-air. With only seconds remaining before impact, Casey deactivates the second missile, saving millions of lives. Looking out the window, Casey sees the military strike fighters screaming toward the ship. He barks an order to Bates to call off the airstrike immediately. The bombers abort. Casey and the surviving sailors are rescued from the ship, returning to land as true American heroes, honored for their